So today we're going to talk about the number one question people don't ask before they commit to the wrong person. And what is that question?
The question is, and then what?
Exactly.
Exactly.
So there's a lots of scenarios. One of them that we've seen personally, that I actually experienced it myself, is that you fall in love, everything is great, you've been married before, and you have kids and they have kids. And then what? When you blend your family, and then what? Do the kids get along? If they don't, and then what? Do you get along with their former? If you do, great. If you don't, and then what?
Right.
And we've also had the experience where you have the extended family, where you have not only just the former spouse, but also who they marry, and then that dynamics. And if they marry somebody who has kids, and you marry, anyway, it just goes on and on.
It goes on and on. And you may have grandparents that want to spend time with the children.
Yeah.
And then you have, somebody has their time, somebody has their time, and it gets complicated. So a lot of the things that need to be discussed, you really have to sit down and work through them.
Yeah.
I mean, it's important because
especially on the holidays, we've seen. I mean, it gets to be a nightmare on the holidays because everybody wants the kids for the holidays, including the grandparents, and it just becomes this. You have to learn how to be very open and patient with that, and so it's really important before you make that ultimate commitment to each other that you talk about, and then what?
Exactly.
And there's other situations we've seen. It's one situation that was really difficult was that the working situation. So we've had where the one of the partners likes to have a lot of time together, but the other partner, their job, they're out of town for 2 weeks at a time, and then they're home for a week, and they're out of time. And that can be really, really difficult for a marriage, especially if your partner wants that quality time with you and you're not available. So that's something to go, okay, well, we're going to get married, and then what?
And then what? We see this also like with military families when a family member gets deployed and it's 6-9 months, they're not there. It's very, very difficult. We've seen it in our family.
Yeah. You just have to have an extremely strong relationship, and you have to have already negotiated that before you make that commitment. Because if you're going to be making that commitment to this person, you know there's a chance they could be deployed and be gone, or you could be deployed and be gone. And that it's not to say that it can't work, because we see it work all the time.
Yes.
It's not easy, but it works. It's just that, and then what? We've also seen situations where they've blended a family, and one partner wants their kids to go to private school, which is extremely expensive, and the other partner goes, well, my kids go to public school, what's the matter with that? And they didn't do the and then what before they got married, and that was a very short marriage.
Other situations that we see are people come together where they're combining incomes, and then something happens with a parent or child or the kids together, and it hasn't been really worked through. How could we possibly work through this if something were to happen? What do you believe your obligation would be or not? And it isn't that it doesn't change. It's just you need to be able to talk about it openly and freely, especially before you commit. In our master class, we have a soulmate summary where you kind of go through it and take a look at some of the things that are non-negotiables for you, or things that you need to discuss before you make a commitment. The reality is, and this is kind of sad, but it's true, is you're attracted, you go through that romance portion, and then you start sharing, oversharing, and then people tend to make commitments before they work through a lot of the compatibility components in the relationship. They're not asking those difficult questions before they're committing, and it creates a lot of problems. And quite frankly, it can really destroy the relationship. We see it over and over and over again where they could have worked through it, but because it becomes so energy charged that when they're talking, it's just like a big explosion. It becomes a dumpster fire and a train wreck, and it doesn't need to be that way.
And it's difficult when you're with somebody and you're totally in love and you want it to work so badly, but you're afraid to talk about finances. You need to know what the finances are. How you guys are going to blend your finances. Do they have good credit? Is it bad credit? It may be you. You've got to talk about the finances. You've got to talk about religion. If you guys get married and have children, what do they need to be? Your religion, my religion? Do we have the same religion? How are they going to be raised? That can be really, really difficult when they have one that says my kids are going to be raised in this religion, and the other one doesn't feel that way. So you got to talk about all the stuff they tell you never to talk about. That's the stuff you need to talk about.
Right.
All the uncomfortable conversations you've ever had with friends and family. That's what you need to talk about.
You need to get comfortable being uncomfortable so you can work through these things and not have all this charged energy about subjects. You know, timing and you know, don't have these conversations when someone's tired. Don't have these conversations when you've had too much to drink.
Well, maybe you could.
Well, maybe.
You might be a little more honest.
Yeah, if you're kind of a happy person after a couple drinks, you might want to have those conversations.
Yeah, and talk about your political thing too, because we have couples that we know that they're diametrically opposed politically. Totally. They have great marriages. They just don't talk about it. That's just not a subject that they talk about.
Right.
And that's the thing. It's what we're getting across to you guys right now on this podcast is you have to ask the hard questions, and you have to ask, and then what?
Right. So one of the things that we talk about in our master class is the fact that your whole life, there's all these subjects. You know, what's your definition of a husband? What's your definition of a wife? What's your definition of parenting? Your parenting styles? What's your definition of a career? Some people in a career, for instance, they're working to climb that corporate ladder, or maybe they want to be an entrepreneur. Maybe they have these dreams that they want to do in the future. You need to have those conversations and find out if your partner is ready, willing, and able to go on this journey with you and support you, and you're willing to go on their journey and support them. You know, you want to talk about finance, investments, insurance, food. I mean, it sounds crazy, but what diet, physical fitness, mental health, how you vacation. That can be a really big deal. Like, for instance, my grandparents worked really hard. They retired early. My grandmother thought they were going to be able to travel and see the world. Well, it ended up that my grandfather, after the second or third day, always wanted to turn back and go home. He did not like to travel. You know, that was kind of a real tough thing in their marriage. They obviously made it. They worked through it, but it was just kind of a sticking point. It was, in a way, sad. So after my grandfather passed, my grandmother traveled like crazy, you know, but she would have loved to have done it with him. So there's all these issues that you really want to talk about and go a little bit further and say, and then what happens, and then what, and have a game plan and talk through it. Now, it's not that that game plan might not change, but at least you know how to have a conversation around it, and you kind of know that person's position.
Yeah.
What else is there? There's so much to go through.
Then that's why in our master class, that's why we have like over 100 questions to go through to make a decision on how you're going, if you're going to make it or not.
Right.
And how you're going to find your mate. And it doesn't mean you have to be 100% on every single one, because we all give each other grace, and we go, okay, that's that one thing that really bugs me, which we call a humorous tolerance.
Right.
and not a divorce court
irritant.
And that's what we're talking about. It's really important when you decide that you want to make a commitment to this person, that before you make the commitment, you have that conversation, and then what?
And then what? So we hope that helped. Get out there, start having those great conversations, even if they're a little uncomfortable. Super important to do that, because that way you really know if that person is your soulmate. It can be compatible with you long term, because you're playing the long game instead of the short game. So remember, always ask, and then what?